Jacob and Esau, the brothers' embrace. The dust rose first from the arid ground, a faint ominous cloud against the clarity of the vast desert sky. Then that distant cloud began to take a dreadful shape, resolving into the distinct forms of determined men and powerful horses. Jacob, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, looked up from the green banks of the Jabbok stream with dawning horror. There, marching relentlessly toward him with purpose, was Esau, his long-estranged brother, and with him a formidable force of 400 men. 20 years of painful, anxious silence were about to be violently broken, and Jacob feared it would be with the terrible clash of swords. The man who now bore the name Israel felt a profound dread, questioning the very promise he had just received. His recent transformative wrestling with the divine had left him with a permanent limp, a physical reminder of his spiritual struggle. Yet it had also bestowed upon him a blessing and a sacred promise of deliverance, a promise now facing its ultimate test. With a mind sharpened by years of managing flocks and families, he acted with swift and desperate decisiveness. He carefully divided his beloved children among their mothers, Leah, Rachel, and the 2 faithful maidservants, creating a strategic, sorrowful procession. The maidservants and their precious children he placed at the very front, a fragile shield destined to meet Esau's potential wrath first. Behind this first vulnerable group, he then positioned Leah and all of her children, his second line of defense. And, in the safest possible position, at the very rear of this living appeal, he placed his beloved Rachel and her young son. Joseph, the cherished child of his deepest love and old age, was given the greatest protection he could offer: his family, his life's work, his entire legacy. All were now arranged as a fragile, desperate defense against his brother's might. Then, with a deep, shuddering breath that carried the immense weight of 2 decades of guilt and regret, Jacob walked out ahead of them all. He had made the decision that he, and he alone, would be the first to face his brother's judgment. The vast, silent distance between the 2 brothers began to close with each determined, limping step he took into the wilderness. The silence between them was heavy and absolute, broken only by the rhythmic thud of hooves on the dry earth and the frantic pounding in Jacob's ears. He could now clearly see Esau's rugged face, a visage hardened by the relentless sun, his powerful frame seated commandingly upon his horse. This was the hunter, the formidable man of the field, the very brother he had cheated of his birthright and blessing. Jacob did not brandish a weapon in defiance, nor did he call out a challenge to the man he had wronged so long ago. Instead, in a gesture of profound submission, he bowed low, his face touching the very dust of the ground. He was no longer the cunning supplanter of his youth, but a humble servant appearing before his aggrieved master. He took a few slow, deliberate steps forward, and then bowed once again, repeating the act of profound contrition. A 3rd time he prostrated himself, and then a 4th, each movement a silent confession of his past sins. Each bow was an undeniable act of profound humility, a plea for forgiveness spoken not with words, but with his entire body. He continued this ritual of repentance until he had bowed a full 7 times, a number signifying complete and total submission. Finally, he was near his brother, where he remained on the ground, completely vulnerable and silently awaiting his long-deserved sentence. The fate of his entire family hung suspended in the heavy, dusty air, dependent on his brother's response. In that moment, it seemed as if the entire world held its breath, waiting for the outcome of this reunion. The 400 men accompanying Esau had halted their advance, their weathered faces remaining entirely unreadable and stoic. Jacob's family watched from a great distance, their hands covering their mouths in a shared expression of terror and desperate anticipation. Then the completely unexpected happened, a true miracle of the heart that defied all of Jacob's deepest fears. With a sudden and powerful movement, Esau leaped from his horse, landing firmly on the ground before his men. He was not reaching for the hilt of his sword, nor was he shouting a battle command to his waiting army. He was running, his body moving with an astonishing swiftness that betrayed the urgency of his feelings. His powerful legs, which had tracked wild game across the vast wilderness, now closed the final distance to his brother. He was not running in anger to punish, but in a great haste to embrace the one he had lost. Esau reached the prostrate form of his brother and immediately threw his strong arms around his neck in a powerful embrace. He pulled Jacob up from the dust of his submission, holding him tightly in a gesture of complete acceptance and love. And Esau, the rough and ready man of the wild, broke down and wept upon his brother's shoulder. The sound of his unrestrained sobbing was like a cleansing torrent of forgiveness, washing away 20 long years of bitterness and pain. Jacob, completely stunned by this unexpected cascade of grace, clung to his brother and wept with him in shared relief. His own tears were a complex mixture of profound relief, immense gratitude, and an overwhelming, unbelievable joy. They kissed one another, not in a formal greeting, but as true brothers whose sacred bond, once fractured by painful deception, was now miraculously restored. In that moment, Jacob knew that God had truly heard his desperate prayer from the night before. He had not just protected him from harm, he had completely transformed his brother's heart, from stone to flesh. When their emotional tears finally subsided, Esau looked past Jacob's shoulder and saw the long line of women and children. They were watching the scene unfold in a state of absolute wide-eyed wonder. Their fears completely vanished. "Who are all these people with you?" he asked his brother, his voice still thick and heavy with deep emotion. Jacob, his posture still reflecting the humility he had learned, gestured with an open hand toward his entire household. "They are the children whom God has graciously given your servant," he replied, the words a testament to his own profound transformation. He no longer saw his large family as a product of his own striving, but as a precious gift from God. The family then came forward in an orderly and respectful procession to meet the uncle they had so feared. The maidservants and their children approached first, bowing low before him, followed by Leah and her children, each one bowing in respect. Finally, beautiful and beloved Rachel came near with young Joseph, and they too bowed down before the family's patriarch. Esau then motioned toward the great droves of goats, sheep, and camels that Jacob had strategically sent ahead as a gift. "What did you mean by all this company which I met on the road?" he asked with genuine curiosity. Jacob answered with sincere earnestness. "It was to find favor in the sight of my Lord," he stated humbly. But Esau shook his head, a generous and forgiving smile spreading across his rugged face, dismissing the need for such a gift. "I have enough, my brother," he said, the words "my brother" a healing balm on Jacob's soul. "Please, keep what you have for yourself," he insisted, showing the full restoration of their familial bond. Jacob insisted with an urgent sincerity, "No, please, if I have found favor in your sight, then accept this gift from my hand. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me so favorably." He urged him to take the blessing, a tribute of honor and gratitude, and moved by this, Esau finally accepted the gift. Esau then proposed, "Let us take our journey together, and I will go before you as a guide and protector." But Jacob, now acting with wisdom, gently declined. "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and the flocks are a care to me. I will lead on slowly, at the pace of the livestock and the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." So Esau turned and began his journey back towards Seir, his homeland in the distant mountains, his heart at peace. Jacob watched him go, a sense of profound tranquility settling over him after decades of turmoil and fear. He then guided his own great caravan to a place he named Succoth, meaning shelters, building a house and booths for his livestock. Finally, Jacob journeyed on, arriving safely at Shechem in the Promised Land, where he purchased his first plot of soil. On that land, his own land, he built an altar, a monument of worship and a testament to a new beginning. He named the altar El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel, a public proclamation that the God of the covenant was his God forever.